and your participation. So what we'll do here is, this meeting is called to order. We'll start with you, Commissioner, and just go down the line and then go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
With questions.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we were starting at 4. We're starting at 4:15. Okay,
No, they will start interviewing at 4:50.
right. I thought we were starting the interviews at 4. My bad.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1,
Do
2.
we, at 30 minutes, do we stop? Do we want to have some of the questions be reserved? Do we want to,
We will finish, yeah.
in the event that people take longer, do we have a plan for how we want to handle that?
What? Let's not cut anybody off. Let's just give them.
But wait, I can give them a 15-minute warning
Mm.
when we're halfway through the 30 minutes, and then that will maybe
Okay.
give them an idea of it, speed up. if they're
Sure.
down.
We're taking them in order
Mhm.
and maybe just throw this out there for thought, but the first one does not get to the last one. Just cut it for everybody else since they didn't get the opportunity to,
Yeah, we can take guidelines from that.
Sure.
I mean, I'd be open to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to keep
If
it
we don't get to
fair
the-
and
yeah.
equitable, we should keep the same amount of time and the same questions to the
So
extent
let's-
possible.
So let's watch the first one and go from there. So I am number 2 and number 6. I'm assuming you're 1 and 5.
Okay.
And, Commissioner Dean is 3 and what?
4 or no,
Oh.
you're on one top.
I'm 4 and 8, you're 3 and 7.
3 and 7. Then did you give it to the applicant at the
Yes.
candidate at 4?
Yes.
pay close attention as to what overall time was with.
The longest time for any candidate, my understanding was 18 minutes.
Yeah.
But these questions are much longer, which is my concern of having 8. One of them will take approximately a minute to read.
Yeah.
So I want to be mindful that we are not, questions 7 and 8 are very long.
Does that screen still come down?
It does.
Does it?
Do you like the-
No, that's not. Well, maybe for old times. sake.
Just to reminisce about the real days.
No need.
Thanks.
Hmm,
No, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to take roll for the record?
Yes, would you please?
City Attorney Doctor,
Here.
Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Commissioner Dean,
Here.
Commissioner Logan,
Here,
Mayor Collins.
Here.
Mayor, did you bring us dinner?
Well, Danae did. She brought us pizza.
She made it herself in the
So,
pizza oven that's stashed in the clerk's office.
yeah, she brought, I mean, we got
Part of
pizza.
that expansion.
So if you're looking for dinner, we have some there.
Might be cold.
No, I think it's still, it came in little after 3. So, yeah, it might be cold by now.
Recording in progress.
Sounded official.
Do you want to get the applicant candidate? Or whatever we call it? Good afternoon, Ms. Harrington.
Hello.
As we did previously, we'll be doing again. We will go around and ask questions. This time we have 8 questions. And at the end of the question, we'll ask if you have any question for us. And then we will excuse you.
Okay.
You ready? Commissioner?
As much as I'll ever be.
Bree, how would you prioritize an emerging issue expressed by the community, such as affordable housing and the unaddressed needs in essential services such as adequate police staffing, a 3rd fire station, and multi-million-dollar infrastructure needs?
Yeah, so, that obviously not being in city government right now, it's a little bit harder for me to say what should be prioritized. But I do think that the first thing is if it's a really visible problem, then it's something that we need to tackle. Things like housing, because we have a very visible unhoused community here that it's along the lines of when Mayor Collins was elected, the snow removal was a very visible problem that needed to be addressed right away so that you could move on to other things. I think if we don't deal with issues that are in the public eye like that, they're not going to see the other things you're doing. I think another thing, I watched the administrative meeting last week, and I was watching the department heads come up and give you priorities for the next budget. And I think listening to the department heads, of course, is going to be also play a major role in prioritizing things because they know what needs to be done immediately and what maybe can be kicked down the road a little bit longer. So having them have their buy-in and having them tell you what that they need, listening to them is, I think, a big part of that. And but of course, everything comes down to funding. What can you afford to put on your plate? So if it's outside your budget, then you just can't do it.
Thank you. Ms. Harrington, please explain a situation where you led change or innovation. What was the situation, and please explain the outcome you had.
Sure. So for me, the big one, when I was on the DHI board was when we did the master plan for downtown. I participated as board president in the statewide meetings about how to do a master plan. At the time, Helena was one of 2 out of the big 7 that didn't have a master plan yet for their downtown which we then brought in an expert to do evaluation on taxation for the downtown core and how having a master plan and doing infill can boost the taxable value of property in the city limits. After that, then we created an outline of a master plan with stakeholders from the property owners and business owners as well. Everybody had input on that. And then once there was basically a draft done, then it was down to many, many public meetings to get input from the community at large, to talk about what their priorities they wanted, and how they saw downtown Helena going forward. And at the end of that, of course, we ratified the document. The outcome, so I think it's a mixed bag. You know, of course, it's a non-binding plan, so it's not like anybody had to follow it once we've made it. I do think it brought in new interest in development in downtown, especially from all the publicity it got. You know, I think a few things, I think like the parking meters, I think that was a definite outcome of the master plan. But I don't think, you know, of course, we haven't achieved it. So, I mean, ultimately, it's always going to be a work in progress.
Thank you.
And I think we're due for a new one, actually. So you're supposed to do one every 10 years.
Third question. Please describe an experience when you had to consider the opinions and experiences of diverse groups, and how did you find consensus amongst all stakeholders?
Yeah, so that was a lot of my time, DHI and BID, because business owners all have, and property owners too, because most business owners aren't property owners, so those are separate entities. You know, property owners just want to rent their spaces to people for the most money they can get. Business owners, you know, of course, they want to invite their customers to downtown, as well as, you know, we of course involve the city in all the things that we do in downtown Helena, whether it be parking, parks department. So when it comes to things like, you know, the bulb outs or the parking, that was a big one. I think the parking was probably one of the most contentious things that we've done over the years, and it continues to be. You know, doesn't matter how many people we bring in to say that we have enough parking downtown, or that this is the best way to get enough spaces for people to park in front of businesses. You're always going to have, whether they're business owners and property owners that have been in downtown for a long time and remember when everything was free, or people, you know, business owners that have employees that need to park downtown and that interferes with that. Professional offices who need places for their clients to park. I think that was probably the biggest one. I think as far as consensus goes, I don't know that we ever came to consensus on that one, but we got the majority of people on board. And then I think the biggest thing for us as, you know, DHI, BID, business owners is to just be a cheerleader for the things that we're doing. So once we made the decision, the biggest thing was for us to put it in the best light, you know, talk about why it's great, talk about ways it makes life easier, talk about the way it's improved our businesses downtown. So
Thank you.
I'm trying to talk slower today.
Oh, that's okay.
Appreciate that. Ms. Harrington, the fourth question. What training do you think you will need to be successful in this position?
Well, obviously, I don't work in government, so I definitely am going to need some training on how, of course, the inner workings of city government. You know, I've touched on the outsides of it a bit, working with departments, whether through my business or through downtown Helena, but I don't know exactly how the different departments interact. And I think just making sure I know clearly defined roles of everybody involved is going to be the biggest one for me. What is in the purview of the commissioners versus the mayor versus any committees that are formed and the department heads of the city departments.
Ms. Harrington, the commission is responsible for policy decisions on behalf of the city. Please describe a time when you were successful in improving systems through policy development.
Yeah, as a business owner, that is an ongoing thing. We have it's a pretty common saying that problems create policy. So usually policy comes on the heels of having an issue. So I mean, that is the first thing, is to identify where you're having an issue. Whether it's, I mean, for us, it's of course low stakes in the pottery world. You know, maybe not all of the employees are, you know, running the kilns at the same temperature, and you have to create a log to make sure everybody's doing it the same way. Or for us, it would be a phone answering policy. I mean, they're low stakes, but you have to do it every day. There's always going to be new ones. You know, we had to create our mask policy during COVID and stick to it. And by gosh, did we get pushed back on that one? Yeah, that was definitely, I think COVID was a 180 for everybody. And if you didn't learn how to make policies during that, then I think you were pretty lost as a business, because we had to change everything that we did.
Thank you.
Ms. Harrington, what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is just that really good ability to communicate. I say as I stumble over words, to communicate effectively. You know, I think with fellow commissioners and you, Mr. Mayor, and you know, the different city departments, and helping facilitate communication between them and the public, and between the commission and the public. You know, if you just have people upset about what you're doing all the time without the ability to tell them why you're doing what you're doing, and why these things need to be done, then, you know, not much else can get done when people are yelling at you all the time. I think attention to detail is really important for anybody running anything. Honestly, that's if you can't pay attention to the little things and make sure that some things aren't slipping between the cracks, then you're not going to be a very effective leader. And I think, you know, these commission positions, they're only 4 years. You got to be a quick learner, because to grasp everything that's coming your way, even if you've worked in city government, I think that it's a whole new ball game when you're creating the policies and having to deal with the public at the same time.
This is a lengthy question.
Yes.
There are times when members of local government legislative bodies stray outside of their statutory roles and insert themselves into the day-to-day operations of organizations, sometimes unknowingly. Understandably wanting to be responsive to their constituents, that sometimes the proper mechanisms can inhibit or hinder. How dedicated are you to working within the confines of the city charter when it comes to organizational management? How would you temper the desire to stray from that charter mandate?
Yeah, I think that hierarchies are really important when it comes to this kind of role. And of course, like I said in the beginning, I think clearly defined roles are really important, so that you know where you can and can't step. I think that to temper the desire to stray from that, I just think that it's making sure that there's really good dialogues, so that people are feeling heard, and they have having a clear path through city government. I know there have been issues in the past with people feeling frustrated about permitting and how to do certain things, get things done. And I think it's really important to create those paths so that people know that to get to this point in doing something with city government, I go here and here and here. And that's where I'm doing, and not having it like, well, I talked to this department, but now they say I have to go over here, and, you know, not knowing. And having that out into the public too, so that they can, you know, whether it's on a website or they can see that, they're like, well, I want to build this thing. How do I get that done? And it says, well, you need to contact here, and you need to develop this form, and you need to do this. And that way they're not coming frustrated to government officials to try and get those things done.
And the last question, again, a bit lengthy. Due to its proximity to their constituency, local government officials are in direct contact with the public they serve, next door neighbors, coworkers, even lifelong friends. That accessibility can result in the same constituents speaking to its commission on a repeated basis, sometimes on the same community matters time and again. Please explain the approach you intend to use to weigh the public outreach you personally receive, to consider staff recommendations, and to examine the greater community needs.
Yeah, like I said in the previous interview, I think listening, making sure people feel heard goes a long way towards keeping that dialogue open without, you know, maybe having too much of your time taken up by any one issue, even if it's as short as somebody emailing you and you emailing back, I've heard you, I'm looking into your email, you know, you can come to this meeting to talk about it further. You know, as I would become familiar with how the inner workings between the city departments and the commission, I think knowing what the commission's priorities are, I'm a big list maker. I love having a list of what needs to be done next. So that I can, if people come to me, I can say, yes, that's on our list. We have these things that might be a little bit ahead of it because of priorities we have identified, whether that be affordable housing, daycare, whatever it is that we feel is a little bit higher need. So they at least know they're on the list somewhere, or their concerns are on our list somewhere. Of course, it's a collaborative process. So, you know, if staff recommendations, that would of course be something you would need to discuss as a body and not individually. As well as greater community needs, that is also a collaborative process. So I think that's another thing, is just making sure that the public knows and the people who reach out know that you are doing this as a commission and not on an individual basis. And while you hear their concerns, and if you agree with them, you can advocate for them, you're still doing this with a group of people and not on your own. Yeah, so then that would come down to sharing as much as possible with the outreach you get with fellow commissioners and you, Mr. Mayor, to come to consensus on the urgencies of problems, which of course takes us back to question number one. It comes full circle. Thank you.
Thank you. We are done with the formal questions.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. You know, we talked in the last one about the meetings are every week, Mondays and Tuesdays. So occasionally I have to travel for work, And that's a pretty normal thing to maybe miss the occasional one for travel or
We,
something like that.
we have Zoom,
Yeah, zooming in, yeah,
so we have recorded hybrid.
yeah, okay, great,
We're allowed to zoom in.
right,
If it so allows us to, so
okay, great. And that makes it easier.
that's for the commission meeting. We're not doing administrative meeting, we don't do Zoom, right?
We do.
Zoom?
We do.
Oh, okay.
I was say I
Why
listened
do you
in
think
on
it
Zoom.
sounds like this?
Oh, yeah, the Melinda, right. So yeah, Zoom is available, you know, where we can also
Right.
access it through that way.
Okay, great.
All right, if nothing else, we thank you for coming and you'll hear from
Yes.
us.
All right.
Thank you, Bree.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Does our next candidate have the questions?
Yes. Timer is running. There's 12 minutes.
How's the jackhammering going?
I'm sorry.
How's the jackhammering going?
Work here at the.
Thank
City
you.
County building. I don't know if anyone noticed. But thank you for drawing.
I was gonna say, I think it's just emblematic that we have a lot of good things happening. Like security upgrades.
Large plane.
It's I think they're training the C-130 pilots
They are.
because they were circling all afternoon.
I went to the tennis courts at Lockheed Park briefly and they weren't like, it felt like you
Yeah.
could touch them.
Wow.
It was very cool.
I was working outside at my outdoor dining table all morning. That's nice not working from home in the summer. And that's just goes right over my backyard.
Melinda, I noticed that you have your jacket with you. I think it might be good today.
I'm still from running home and tearing back up
Oh.
the stairs and just now starting to feel
Just
cold.
feeling good.
It's very warm.
The Commissioner Logan's turn.
Yeah, I kind of messed with the thermostat there earlier and I probably shouldn't have.
I get in trouble when I touch the thermostat. Apparently it's a different standard around here.
Not accused. She must have felt your
Pretty
luck.
inconsistent behavior here at the city.
Well, I was fairly.
I did tell you that I turned the heat of the temperature up and for you.
I
specifically.
know. It's because I'm not allowed to touch the thermostat.
He did it outside of my eyes.
Yeah, nobody was here.
Mhm.
No fire station. I can sneak.
Yeah. What?
Because he doesn't feel
Yeah, I was supposed to be in the hospital today, but this thing got me all shook up.
I was
And
gonna say,
Danae,
The mics are on. Just a moment.
but, hey, that's good for me. If I'm supposed to be in the hospital, I'm here.
he's like, he'd like some public sympathy.
There you go. I'm garnering some. Some public sympathy. You don't see someone right on the board and say, listen, Mayor, we feel for you. Sorry. Thanks for being so dedicated.
She only used 23 minutes.
That's cool.
City at work, people.
I like your positive, optimistic attitude.
Make sure you quote that, Jonathan.
No, thank you.
What's that? What do you have?
He's got an old cookie.
No,
Yeah,
she
the
was,
cookies were even older than last time.
No,
Yeah,
no,
you
right?
complained about the cookies last time. I think I need new ones. I know he keeps them instead.
The days were young and smooth.
as long as they last.
Yeah,
That's as long as it can be.
right.
I don't think I'd do any fewer. I mean, they're pretty short. Some of the days are pretty short depending on the campsite, but having hikes in between and then swimming and fishing and
Did you hike up to the cave?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the poison ivy on the way up?
let me tell you,
Oh,
I was
no.
very careful.
Oh, good.
None of us, luckily we did have a medical professional with us too, who had actually gotten poison ivy the week and a half before.
Oh,
So
gosh.
he was like ultra. But no, we were all, there was a ton though.
There's a ton.
I had no idea there'd be that much.
The very first time I went, I've been several times, the very first time I ever went, there was nothing. I knew nothing about it. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse as the years go on.
Well, and you are like on your hands and knees, like climbing up some spots
Yeah,
too. So
exactly.
it's not like you can just avoid.
One of the times I went up, you know how steep it is. Somebody dislodged a rock and it almost hit someone in the head
Oh,
and
right.
took them out. Cause it's really steep going up.
Well, when we were going up, there was a family coming down. They had a 4-year-old up there. And all of us were like, this is, they had no idea what they were getting.
They
in.
didn't know.
And
Yeah.
so one of the guys with us, he like very experienced backpacker and rock climber and wildland firefighter, like did all the things. And so he like helped them
Wow.
down. But I was like, why you would, I mean,
Yeah.
the first 40 feet, I would have turned around and said,
Yeah.
back in the raft.
Oh, I never did ask, how was your weather?
Perfect.
Was
We
it-
had one day where there was maybe 2 hours of, blinding rain and snow on the water. But I feel like that's like a rite of passage. But the rest was perfect blue sky, no wind, hardly, no rain.
Cool.
Yeah, 80s.
Okay. Stephanie just wanted me to tell you, hope you know even Mike's hot. She can get everything. So,
It's okay, we're just talking about the river.
yeah, I'm just telling you what she told me. You know,
Chit chat, Stephanie.
I said, yeah, I didn't know. Janae told us.
That was her way of saying.
Are we ready?
Zip
Toward
it.
the mics when you.
Oh.
How are we going to be behind when we were ahead?
2 minutes and 32 seconds. Would you like to know chapter 15?
No, give us time.
I didn't even question
That clock is,
Question that clock.
But I thought we
we're almost
finished,
exactly on.
but we finished early, so that's why I was confused.
I think she gave the questions right on time.
So feel free to give the next round of questions early if that's convenient.
If
Yeah, it's
you're-
supposed to be
If they're
done.
here.
If they're here.
If they're here, it's supposed to be done. Just hand it to them. That will
So,
put,
thank you, Commissioner.
that will put us in, yeah, Commissioner. That'll put us in ahead.
Yes, Commissioner.
Oh, Lord, there we go.
I always end up with the water, which I never need.
I'm fine.
You're good, okay.
Well, I sort of said there also. for the
My 11
candidates.
drinking vessels was not sufficient. We're ready.
Are you all ready?
We're ready.
Okay, sounds good.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Mr. McGee.
I like afternoons better.
As like last time we met, we will be going, we have 8 questions this time. And we will be going around each person, each commissioner and myself will ask 2 questions. And at the end of the questions, we will ask if you have any questions for us.
Okay.
And then we will conclude and deliberate.
Yep.
You ready?
Yep, oh, I'm the last one?
No,
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
No, you're the second.
Okay.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. McGee, how would you prioritize an emerging issue expressed by the community such as affordable housing and the unaddressed needs in essential services such as adequate police staffing, third fire station, and multi-million-dollar infrastructure needs?
well, many of the issues you listed here and many others were brought up during the election last year many times. And I kept hearing the word solve. And I hate that word when it comes to some of these issues. Improve. Some of the issues will never be solved. I mean, there are issues that'll be around for a long time that we just don't have the resources or the ideas or whatever to fix, such as affordable housing or, the homelessness or any of that. We just don't have the answers yet. And there's lots of cities around the country that have tried on some of those issues and they haven't solved them either. So I'd like to use the word improve. And when you say prioritize, it's listen to the city manager, listen to the staff. I mean, they're out there, they're talking, they know how bad the sewer system is or the water, or if we're in dire needs for something. We need to listen to our, and I'm not saying you don't, I'm saying I need to listen to the special interest groups. I need to listen to the HCC. I need to listen to the advisory boards that the mayor has appointed. That's what they're there for, and see what their thoughts are. And finally, there's citizens out there that'll tell you what they think too. I found that out. and you need to listen to them and see what they think the priorities are for the city. And then you need to sit down as a group. That's what the commission's for, and talk about them and see if there is the resources to do it. Some of the issues, we may not have the resources. Yeah, they're a priority, but we just plain don't have, or we don't have the ideas, or we don't have the authority, or whatever it is. But there's a lot of them that we do. And maybe there's some concepts out there that we haven't thought about, or other citizens have thought about, that we need to listen to. Maybe there's some ideas out there that we just don't know about. But a lot of it is just listening and talking to the different people out there that know the city well, and not sit back and think that I, as a commissioner, or I, as a citizen, know everything about this city, because I don't. And you have a lot more knowledge than I do. I've been out of the loop for 3 years now. I've been kind of in it, but I need to get back up to speed and find out what some of the emerging issues are that maybe I haven't seen. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
is Emily timing me again?
Yes.
am.
Yeah,
she's on.
okay.
But I'm just doing the full 30 minutes. So I can let you know
Oh,
if we're running
Okay.
close.
Okay.
Okay, number 2, please explain a situation where you led change or innovation. What was the situation, and explain the outcome?
Okay. As chief of police, this one here, there's numerous examples. And the one that I'd like to use is the SROs that we still have in the schools. And this is back in the mid-90s when I first became chief of police, and there were some school shootings going on and problems around schools around the country, and the schools really wanted some SROs. I felt it was very important. I had really studied up on SROs. I went to some training to make sure I understood exactly what they do and don't do. And so I decided to take that on. Let's get some SROs in the school. There's some grants available, and it was quite a furor in this community about whether we should have SROs. There was quite a group opposed to it. And some of my philosophy was I didn't want the PD to take the lead on it. So I talked to the schools. They agreed to take the lead on it. And that took a lot off, that it was the HPD out there trying to, push policemen in schools or whatever. The schools were saying, we want them. And yes, I worked a lot behind the scenes and let the schools kind of take the brunt of some of the parents out there and that, but it worked beautifully. And we got SROs in school. We have 4 SROs out there in schools. And it was quite a challenge, and it took a lot out of me, but I felt it was important at that time, especially what was going on around the country. And it's one of my prouder moments, but many times we've taken on innovation or change at the police department, and I've been either a lead role or I've been behind the staff, pushing them in the back, making them do the work and get it done.
Okay, please describe an experience when you had to consider the opinions and experiences of other diverse groups, and how did you find consensus amongst all stakeholders?
Oh, boy. Many times again at the police department, but one that really sticks out is, and I can't remember the exact year, but the first year we're going to have the Gay Pride Parade in Helena. Oh my goodness. I really myself didn't think it'd be that big a deal. And man, the people coming out of the woodwork and the ones opposed to it. And we had city staff that was going to go down there and protest it. Some of them were making threats. It was just, I was very surprised. And we really worked with, especially the Gay Pride people, we really worked with them. We assured them that we're going to make this work. They really didn't know how to put it together in Helen exactly. So I had staff, they did all the work with the city to get it all set up. We picked the routes carefully. We had good security. And we did have a few problem people along the way, but considering there was no violence, anything like that, that thing went off very well for what the community was saying and what we were hearing at the police department. We were really concerned. And this last year, I went down to the Gay Pride event that they had this last year, and it's so much, it's improved drastically. And I'm using the word improved again. It's not solved. There's still people out there that cause problems. There's still people that are, against their lifestyle. And, it's improved so much so, and it just takes time. And will it ever be perfect? No, but man, I know some of you go down there during that event, and it's really grown. very few problems. The police don't have to have a lot of security for it anymore. So, that's one that I worked very hard on. I wanted it to succeed. I didn't want, you don't want it to come to Helena and things fall apart.
Right.
And it went very well. Oh, you're it.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm up. Question number 4. What training will you need to be successful in this position?
What training? Well, one of the first things I'm going to need to do is, and I don't know if you still do it or not, but I need to sit down with the city attorney and go over exactly what a commissioner can and can't do again, who they can and can't talk to, what issues can you go out and talk to the public, which ones do you need, because you're going to make a judicial decision on which ones you shouldn't. I kind of remember all that, but I would like to get back up to speed on that. And, what's a conflict out there? I need to get up to speed on that again. It's been quite a while. And I also need some training to include the issues going on. I think I know a lot of them, but there's some that you're going to have to bring me back up to speed on, or maybe I try to watch you guys on TV quite often, but I'm still not, I'm sure a lot goes on behind the scenes that I just don't know about anymore after being out of the loop so long. And I want to talk to the city manager especially, and department heads with his permission, and maybe some staff, and see what the issues are going on out there in parks and in, I don't know, public works, and try to get back up to speed on that, who the people are out there again. A lot of them have retired. I need some training there again on all the city departments again. And I'd like to get around to the businesses around town and talk to them. I know quite a few of them. I need to get back up to speed in the downtown area. I've been down there for a while talking to people, but I know quite, and I need to get back up to speed with them on what the issues are. Last year I talked to quite a few of them, but I've kind of lost that contact. And I consider that training too. I need training on what's going on in the city again. I think I'm pretty good up to speed, but I still need some.
Mr. McGee, the commission is responsible for policy decisions on behalf of the city. Please describe a time when you were successful in improving systems through policy development.
Boy, I don't know what exactly to say there. At the police department, we always had to develop our own policies, and we just didn't have the money to hire a company. And I know it has happened since I retired, which is great. I know now that they are, and that's great. But we had to do all our own policies, and we were always trying to improve things with policies. It was constant. And in fact, we had one captain, and that's all he was responsible for at times was policy. Send him to training, send him to different policy type schools so that we could try to keep up on, I don't know, things such as, I wrote down a few, racial profiling. That was a big issue many years ago. We had to get up to speed on that. This last few years about chokeholds, which we were ahead of the game on. We didn't allow chokeholds years ago. Self-defense, I mean, lots and lots of policy with the police department, and most of them, had to be approved. Some of them, had to be approved by the city attorney. They had to go through them and make sure that we were on legal grounds and we were doing it correctly. Some of them the city manager had to take a look at, and at times worked on city policy too with the city manager over the years. If they involved the police department or they involved all the department heads, we would work with the city manager on different policies. And I know a lot about policy.
All right. What do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role?
Well, the same old word that's been used over and over again for 100 years, communication. I mean, you're the communicator with the public, you're the communicator with the businesses, the city manager, the other commissioners, other elected officials. I mean, it's just communication with each other. That's how you learn what's going on. That's how you learn what other people are thinking. That's how you learn new ideas. And to me, that's the most important. And in communication, I'm not just talking about going to meet with Commissioner Logan and talking to him. I'm talking about communication through the press, communication through Facebook. I mean, it's one area that I'd really like to see the city keep working on. I'd like, if I was appointed, I'd like to meet with the public information officer through the city manager and talk to that person and see what more ideas they've had. I looked at the city webpage, which has improved drastically. It's much nicer. I don't do Facebook, so I don't know much about Facebook, but that's something I'm gonna have to get into. During the campaign, I had somebody else do that. But communication, and like I say, it's just not verbal or one-on-one. I'm talking about getting the word out there about what's going on in the city, and even the minor things. I mean, you're doing a great job with all the things going on in the city. It's improved drastically, but I think a lot of citizens out there want to know some of the little things that are going on too that you just don't hear about in the press, or you'd have to go on and watch the meeting to get to. And, I'd like to see work on that.
This is a lengthy question.
I
There
can
are-
just answer it if you want.
I think I'll have to read it for the public, but
Oh,
thank
okay,
you.
Okay.
There are times when members of local government legislative bodies stray outside their statutory roles and insert themselves into the day-to-day operations of the organization, sometimes unknowingly. Understandably wanting to be responsive to their constituents, that sometimes the proper mechanisms can inhibit or hinder. How dedicated are you to working within the confines of the city charter when it comes to organizational management? How would you temper the desire to stray from that charter mandate?
I don't need to temper to stray from it. It's a policeman in me, but I abide by the law. I abide by the Constitution. I abide by the charter. The charter is the Constitution of the City of Helena, and I will abide by it the best I can. Does that not mean I might make a mistake here and there? And I abide by court rulings. Even if I don't agree with them, I abide by them. That's what the law of the land is. And like I say, maybe it's a policeman in me. I don't know. But the charter is what we're supposed to. And if we don't agree with it, don't like the way it works, then it needs to be changed through the proper process and change it. And that's how we do it. And like I say, that question's easy for me. I will abide by the charter. I will take an oath to abide by the Constitution of Montana, the Constitution of the United States. I mean, it's just been brought up in me. It's a policeman in me, I guess, but no problem there.
Okay, another lengthy question. Due to its proximity to their constituency, local government officials are in direct contact with the public they serve, next door neighbors, coworkers, even lifelong friends. That accessibility can result in the same constituents speaking to the commission on a repeated basis, sometimes on the same community matters time and again. Please explain the approach you intend to use to weigh the public outreach you personally receive, to consider staff recommendations, and to examine the greater community needs.
Well, I want to listen to all ideas before a decision. I mean, I want to really try hard that I'm not making a decision before I ever come to a meeting. Citizens want to feel like they're coming to a meeting and they're expressing themselves, and you're listening and you're going to weigh what they have to say. And in the past, sometimes commissioners have come to meetings and made it clear they've already made a decision, and that's just not fair to the public. It's not fair to those that want to speak to the commission. And I want to listen. And there's some citizens that they don't want to talk a lot on certain subjects, and they need to be listened to. You may get tired of them, whatever else, but you need to listen to them and give them the proper venue to express what they want to say and take it in consideration. And then take in everything you can and weigh it against the issue. You know, you must weigh it against what you said up there, you must weigh it against all the community matters and everything else. And you need to get out and talk before you make the decision. You want to make sure, feel like you're making a decision of what the majority of citizens in Helena want, and weigh it against the city needs. But if it's within the city needs, I think you need to go with what you believe the majority of the citizens want in Helena. And the citizens will decide in time whether you're making decisions they want you to make, because there's elections coming up. And if they don't think you're making the decisions they want, they'll elect somebody else. If they believe you're trying hard and you're making decisions that the majority want, then they'll probably reelect you, or if you're not running again, elect somebody else that will do the same thing. But they want to feel like you're making the right decision for the city, but it's what the citizens want. And that's hard to do. I know it is. I've watched over the years, I've watched commissions have budget problems and nobody shows up in the meeting room to talk about them. And it's kind of frustrating. I know that, but got to kind of push hard and try to say to yourself, I communicated it the best I could. And if nobody shows up or very few say anything to you, then you make the decision the best you can in your mind. And I know it's hard to do. I've watched it many times.
We have concluded the formal
Yep.
questions.
Too fast again.
Do you have any questions for us?
Boy. No, I'll just reiterate that you have a hard decision and you have some good candidates there. Kind of read about them. They're very good also. And I feel I'm very good, but if you decide one of the others fits into what you want better, no problem. I understand that. I've been around a long time. I understand how life works and how government works. So no concerns there. I would like the position, but I completely understand. And I can't think of anything else.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
You.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. McGee.
Might rain up there. So where am I at?
Okay.
Well,
And I'll
no.
wash my
Or
car.
it might start more fires. I don't know.
And it's the first football game this Saturday. Yep, there's Carol one. I live around all the college kids, so
Oh, is that, which one? Which one's Blair?
Andy, yeah, he
Is
is
that
getting he is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Oh,
Yes, Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yep.
Andy.
Yes, it.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's on. It's homecoming, and homecoming this year I think is on like the maybe 10th,
Yeah.
something like that.
Blair told me about that.
Yeah, Yeah.
Thank
it'll
you.
be fun.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did you forward it on to the next?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
How much time do you have?
8 minutes.
Thank you. Rich, don't pick up logistics, because I originally thought we would be done by 6. It's not in the cards.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
any water?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Commissioner Dean?
I'm good. Thanks. You should
I just
actually-
slowly and painfully refilled my bottle
Thank you for
on a hot
reminding
mic,
me.
so
though.
thank you.
You should have given us more than 10,000.
Dollars.
The student loan. You
Oh,
should
did
have
it just
told-
come out?
Yes, Biden is about to announce.
Okay, I'll take
What
the
are they
10.
saying?
I will take the 10.
They will drop 10,000 all student
Huh.
loan, but people $125,000 less.
That's
And
not a
people
huge
making
dent, but it's
100.
enough of a dent.
No, they should have given us about 50,000, I think. 10,000 ain't nothing. Ain't gonna make me vote for them, so they better do more.
You know how many?
Hot mic.
Oh my God, oh my, you gotta shut up.
Oh, boy.
You have a fever.
Yeah, it's not-
Delirious.
So now I think she's got the heat pump on.
I know, so
I have
you-
remained comfortable today, which is a miracle, because usually I'm just frozen all the time.
we won't
My
judge you if you
granddad
take
said-
off your jacket.
As my granddad said, I'll suffer in silence.
You can take off your jacket. We'll be all right.
Yeah.
I think my lips were purple.
Last week,
It was freezing cold.
yes. That's why I wore pants today.
What do we have next week? We have a
We have
special.
swearing in and
One item on Monday.
one
That's a
item.
special.
Yeah, that's a special.
And then we have a regular admin. Yeah,
No,
because
there's
it's
no
Wednesday.
admin next week.
No admin next
I
week?
don't think there's. an
Is there
admin next-
city county?
No?
Oh,
No, that's in the
yes,
next
you might
month,
be right.
So
No,
wait a
because we
minute.
that's
just.
next
texted it.
month,
Just
Yeah,
the sixth,
When does Labor
the
Day
sixth and the seventh.
work into this?
that's the
We don't have
following
anything,
weekend.
the following, we don't have anything until the sixth and the seventh.
I see.
We don't have an admin meeting this week.
don't
The
think
sixth and the
so.
seventh
That's right.
of September.
Pretty. It's the First day of school, so that's
We just have this special
nice.
meeting at 6.
On Monday.
and Nothing on 31st.
cool.
which is Wednesday.
UID and the fire department thing.
Have you met yet?
It'll be our first one on Wednesday.
How big a group?
I'll tell ya. Oh, it's not posted. I want to say it's like
Yeah, we don't have anything till the
Seven?
sixth and
That sound
seventh,
right?
right?
Yep. That's
7,
what
10.
Fire
Yeah,
people
Attorney
or-
just said.
I think so.
That's for the
10.
city, county, and
Sheila,
admin.
I think.
So one,
I'll look at it. I don't know for
it
sure.
was a big ordeal we did it last time. They were like, not only fire related agencies, but the hospital and other sort of community stakeholder groups. And
I could be totally misremembering. Glenda
and
was
it went
just,
on for about a year. Yeah.
we have meetings scheduled through December.
Did you just say Calendar?
I said Glenda.
Oh, I'm trying to say.
But
Good Wife.
Glenda.
Have you seen The Good Wife?
No, no, good work, but
Oh, the
yeah.
Good Wife, yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it Kalinda from that show?
Yeah, she's the
Yes,
investigator.
she's amazing. She's like the best
No.
character ever.
Other amazing
Okay.
Glenda.
Kalinda.
Kalinda.
Yes. We should be ready to start our next one, should we?
Okay, I'll have to pull it. I need to read
Well, that sounds about right. I think they were gonna do it kind of scaled back version.
this weekend, I'm gonna read the strategic master plan again. Because I feel like my first reading was a little overwhelming.
Spot there.
In this. I also though don't want to be. I think it's helpful in some of those meetings when it's the first ones. If I don't have too many, like I can develop some more questions during the meeting.
Our next candidate.
I just want to say thanks for the pizza. City Hall.
Nice.
Be careful,
Wait
these
a
are
minute.
hot
So
mics.
is-
We haven't gotten any yet.
Don't worry, you can't hear anything if you're talking back here, so all they're gonna hear is what you guys are saying.
Is there any left?
There is.
Did you take the last piece?
No,
Last
no.
one. How's it going? Good one.
Get out of here.
We should be there, right?
Now I'm gonna just make a point.
I said, let's not, I said, this is Danae's face when people start to tell her how to do her job.
His face.
You notice it's away from the camera.
She does remember that the mics are on.
Yes. she does.
Switch the order so I don't have to roll for this question.
No.
Well, thank you for the reminder of the conditions last night. I was so happy to just get through that motion. And then I forgot the conditions. Yeah,
I have multiple computer screens, so I can never be quick enough to make the motion with you two, like.
Yeah,
you
we're
guys should be on a
jumping.
game show.
we're Johnny on the spot.
Well, we're pretty, I feel like we've gotten it down where we can like look down and say, okay, who's making the motion?
I can't, so I'm always trying to have the language ready for when, if I ever am fast enough.
You can just give us a heads up next time.
That's okay.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Ms. Mango.
Thank you for having me back.
Thanks for coming. Well, like last time, the commissioners and myself will ask questions. And we each have 2 questions for you. This time it's 8 instead of 6. At the end of our formal questions, we'll ask you if you have questions for us, like the last time. So if you're ready, we'll start.
Yes.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Ms. Mangold, how would you prioritize an emerging issue expressed by the community such as affordable housing and the unaddressed needs in essential services such as adequate police staffing, a 3rd fire station, and multi-million-dollar infrastructure needs?
That is an interesting question because I kind of wanted to ask the same thing of all of you. You know, how are you prioritizing everything? When I began to look at it, I thought at first, of course, of the ARPA funding for infrastructure, because that may have a time and a date stamp that needs to be addressed. And so there may be something that has to be addressed more frequently than some of the others. However, adequate police staffing is something that I have heard in the community, especially these last couple of weeks. And it has been raised on a number of occasions. So it's certainly made an impression upon me. The third is, of course, affordable housing. I brought it up in the first interview, and it continues to be an issue that is looked at daily, not only in Helena, but across the nation. And then the third is the fourth is the fire engine. However, it would be wonderful to have a fire department on the other side of the tracks.
Thank you.
Ms. Mango, please explain a situation where you led change or innovation. What was the situation? And please explain the outcome.
At the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee, research has been paid over the years to improve production. And Montana is about the 4th largest state in the nation that produces wheat. And our number 1 buyer is Japan, 2nd is Korea, Taiwan, but it's mostly North Asia. Our buyers in North Asia had some concerns about quality. So they had their purchasing concerns were based on quality, but our research was looking more at developing grain that was going to increase production. So we brought them together in a conversation to make sure that plant breeders and researchers understood the importance of introducing quality standards, step-by-step quality standards into new grains that were going to be developed and then put into production. And that partnership with Japan buyers as well as Korean and Taiwan buyers really even locked in the relationship stronger. And that conversation continues to this day. The second one that came to mind was one of the mediations are very difficult often, and there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot at stake with people because most of the mediation opportunities that I was engaged with involved financial difficulties with farm loans. One in particular was a pumpkin farmer in eastern Montana that the loans were being called in by the federal government. And during mediation, we were able to really understand what the problems were from both sides and tried to come up with a better and more creative structure for the farmer to stay in business. And today, from what I understand, they're doing very well.
Next question. Please describe an experience when you had to consider the opinions and experiences of diverse groups, and how did you find consensus amongst all stakeholders?
Well, you know, the legislature comes to mind first and foremost. I don't think you'd find a more diverse and wide variety of experiences that come together and have very strong opinions about the direction the policy should take. I think the one thing that we did notice was that you have to make sure that everyone understands the problem. And some parts of a problem may be minor to others. They may be exceedingly important to someone else. And so really trying to work through the problem as well as ideas to solve it was probably has been and continues to be part of the most challenging work I've had with the Montana State Legislature. I think with positive change, we probably were able to get the increased funding for the Growth Through Agriculture program. And the Growth Through Agriculture program farms businesses that are engaged in an agriculture activity in Montana. And that includes breweries. The microbreweries here in Helena have been funded by Growth Through Agriculture, distilleries, bakeries, feed mills. If it has to do with agriculture, we were able to show that that investment in a agriculture-based business and the support of the state really enhanced a business, and they became successful, and we were able to show a high success rate with that.
Next question. What training will you need to be successful in this position?
Probably understanding the processes and the purposes of all the advisory committees. I tried to look at each one of them, and there are quite a few of them. And while their names give you a really pretty clear understanding of them, I think I would really need an education with all of that and what their purpose was, what they continue to do, and how has it evolved. I think some education about the budget figures and how they've been determined. And then probably the interview the department heads and find out what their biggest challenges are in each department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, a little slow there. Ms. Mangold, the commission is responsible for policy decisions on behalf of the city. Please describe a time when you were successful in improving systems through policy development.
Well, coming from a policy background, it's hard to narrow it down, but you know, I worked on the transportation bill, variety of farm bills, homeland security. But one in particular was the air base in Great Falls was destined to be cut during the BRAC process. And we were able to work very, very hard. Senator Baucus and Senator Burns were able to prove the importance of keeping that base. And through a lot of determination and constant visits to the Pentagon, we were able to save the air base in Great Falls.
Thank you.
Miss Mango, what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role?
I put down dedication, curiosity, and the desire to improve the community that I live in. But in reflection, after looking at what I've answered in the past questions, I think patience must be something that you must practice on a daily basis.
Thank you.
There are times when members of a local government legislative body stray outside of their statutory roles and insert themselves into the day-to-day operations of the organization, sometimes unknowingly. Understandably wanting to be responsive to their constituents, that sometimes the proper mechanisms can inhibit or hinder. How dedicated are you to working within the confines of the city charter when it comes to organizational management? How would you temper the desire to stray from that charter mandate?
Very comfortable. I had this happen a number of times. Legislators would, have an angry constituent, and they would demand that we change the law, the rule, to meet the constituents' demands. And the only way to resolve it was to actually really open a point of dialogue and show them what the rules were. And often it came down to reminding legislators that it's our job to carry out the rules and laws that they passed before. And so it was the staff's job to do that. And so understanding that talented staff are hired by the City of Helena and that it's their job to carry out those laws and regulations. I think that's probably the most helpful outlook you should have.
Thank you.
And the final question. Due to its proximity to their constituency, local government officials are in direct contact with the public they serve. Next door neighbors, coworkers, even lifelong friends. That accessibility can result in the same constituents speaking to the commission on a repeated basis, sometimes on the same community matters time and again. Please explain the approach you intend to use to weigh the public outreach you personally receive, to consider staff recommendations, and to examine the greater community needs.
That actually was a question, it was again, a question I was going to ask. How do you bring, a constituent that keeps bringing the same thing up over and over and over again because he doesn't feel, or she doesn't feel it's been resolved? How do you, I'm sorry, I'm turning the question around. Probably not something you wanted, but that is a question I do have. I think sometimes private conversations need to be had with constituents to explain the restrictions that commissioners have as well as the staff has. But for, reasonable expectations, things can be examined. But if it is an unreasonable request, usually with a budget item or a change of road for them in particular, I think that requires, again, patience with the constituent to help them to understand that the limitations are there.
Thank you.
Ms. Mangold, the formal questions I've concluded, and do you have any questions for us?
I do. It comes back to the advisory committees. How do you schedule all, there's a lot of them. And so maybe I'm overwhelmed with all of them, trying to navigate through them. How do you approach getting each of them heard and understanding, the advice that they're giving you?
We have the commissions we are on, we distribute ourselves among the various advisory boards.
Okay.
And they schedule their time. The commission does not schedule time for the advisory boards. Those boards schedule their own times. And what was the other one you asked?
Well, I would just on the advisory boards, how we manage them. Right now, we actually are kind of in a process of over the last year evaluating. There are no consistent bylaws right now across an advisory board, so it's kind of resulted in a lot of confusion and a need for patience. And so one thing that we've been working on and hope to resolve this fall is consistent bylaws across all of the advisory boards, so there is some consistency, and then a clear process that's outlined in those about what they're advising on, the commission on, and what that process actually looks like, because it's not consistent across the boards. And I think it's resulted in, I think, a lot of confusion and just not great efficiency either.
And if I might, Mr. Mayor, add, there have been efforts to have periodic updates from boards before the commission to sort of get people on a schedule. Around the time of the budget, that's a time when many boards contribute recommendations based on the budget. So there's not a one clear answer, but it is, as indicated by the mayor and Commissioner Dean, a process we're working towards improving to help get that information in a regular and streamlined manner.
Huh, okay. The other question I have is, I assume that there are a number of unions associated with the different groups. Are there union negotiations, going on now? Is there?
Not at the moment.
I think all contracts have been negotiated.
Yeah.
and
But the
probably
city
haven't.
manager's the one who.
Yeah,
Good.
and the city manager or his designee negotiates those, and I think at the appropriate time, it's up to us to grant approval or, approve them, but ultimately the negotiations is up to the manager.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
It's the executive side of things. So.
It's good to hear. I think that's it.
All right, thank you, Ms.
you.
Mango.
Thank you.
Good luck with the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's because every single time I start to trip over that word, it's not right.
It's on number 7. I just need to read slower.
Yeah, there's one word that is off on that. Yeah, my brain was like, "Don't know what to do."
My brain puts one word into the question that's not there.
Yeah. He also puts please him because he's yours.
Maybe hear your compliment.
What's that?
Nothing. You
Nothing.
missed it.
What did you say?
I said you were nice.
To
You added the word please to your question.
just, it's part of the right thing to do. Oh, and please explain the outcome.
How much time have we?
5 minutes.
13 minutes.
Thank you.
My watch is yelling at me.
Let me yell, watch us, don't yell.
It is. It's doing that.
Oh, that's what you mean.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta stand up too. Oh. That fountain, we need to do something about it. The water that comes out of there, it's not okay. The fountain directly outside the office. We'll get it cleaned up.
Yes,
I mean, the water.
I have asked Mr. Mayor. Due to its height in that area. And they can go through your wall.
Maybe we just need to get those Colligan stuff.
We have it in chambers.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah, yeah. But then we don't need it. I forgot that we had it in the chamber.
I'll happily open that door.
I was drinking that bad water.
That, you're right, though, that water
Yeah.
does not taste good.
It doesn't
Yeah.
taste good.
I've had that.
But I forgot about the chamber. I wish I had known.
We're not the first to point out that. I bet.
It's just that.
We could solve this.
That's what I was just gonna say. I think we could figure this all out. Yeah.
Yeah, Sean, where was the city office for the civic center? Civic center. Yeah, but that must be this building.
I was noticing that there's women in many of the groups.
Oh. Yeah, long time back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat to see. Of course, some of them are just, I shouldn't say.
No,
They're
but-
not on the commission, but
My dad's favorite, she was a teacher, but she was also the mayor, Kathleen Rainey.
Yeah.
oh, I just saw her.
She lived down in, I think, I almost think she lived above Haps. Yeah,
She was a-
quite a character.
That, I was just gonna say that, I bet she was quite the character then.
Yeah. And she, strong leader, would say that, I'll say that since.
Oh, it's freezing.
Yes.
Just right.
I didn't realize how cold it was until I walked back in. Laugh about it.
I have Raynaud's, and so it's hard for me to warm up once I get cold, really?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
I
funny.
jumped-
It is you and I that talk about how cold it is
I
sometimes.
jumped into, not the Bull River, but something close to it, and my hands, it was completely white. It
Yeah.
took almost an hour to get it back.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
It's amazing how long
Winter.
it takes.
winter is coming, and that's what it's like all the time.
Yep. But after I run, it's hard for me, even when it's hot out, it's hard for me to get cold or to get warm again.
Yep.
And I went running at noon, so now it's really hard. And my hands are completely white.
I found that warm water is the fastest.
Just like going
If I
in
go
the
in the bathroom and
just
run my
warm-
hands
Yeah.
under warm water, it brings it back faster than anything else.
I have done it before.
Extremities?
I'm Sure, I've used
It's,
it.
yeah, you just like, you can see all the blood leaves, but like it's one finger, it's half of a finger, it's all of them, and they're just dead white. It's a circulation thing. And it happens in the feet too.
It's some people are, it's really painful. I don't have the pain. I just have really extreme cold and I'll get purple lips, purple fingers, toes, but it's not painful. So,
Sometimes you don't always, for me, I don't always know. And I look down, I'm like,
yes, yep,
there's nothing there.
yeah.
I had started to make a nitro cold brew in my house. I have a nitro growler. Okay. And I brought some with me.
You're-
You're a brewmaster?
No,
Say, is it, it's not totally, I mean, I could, but I'm trying to cut back.
I usually only drink it in the morning, but like this much cold brew.
Yeah.
If I have afternoon meetings and things, it helps, but it's
It's
strong.
Oh, I was on a different brew. Sorry.
Mine's a coffee, but I mean, it's a nitro growler. It could be used for anything, but I use it for coffee and it's very fun.
Yeah, whenever you are.
Hello.
Hi.
Mr. Shirtlift, how you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
Well, good afternoon, and like before, commissioners will ask questions. And this time, we have 8 questions. And each commissioner and myself will ask 2 each. And upon the conclusion of those formal questions, you will have an opportunity, if you do have questions, to ask us. You ready,
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shirtlift, how would you prioritize an emerging issue expressed by the community such as affordable housing and the unaddressed needs and essential services such as adequate police staffing, a third fire station, and multi-million-dollar infrastructure needs?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Commissioner Logan. Well, at the center of everything, my priorities start with people, our places, and our prosperity, whether possibly our citizens, our community, and our commerce. I would confer with the mayor and the commissioners. I would confer with the city manager, and I also too would confer with the staff. I would take a look at our work plan, our budget, see what our priorities are, our discretionary funds that we had, and also to take a look at our TIF dollars that we're able to use, or possibly if needed. We do have an amendment process by which Commissioner Reed used about a month ago to try and allocate funds away from the golf course towards the housing fund to help tackle the housing crisis that we're having and help impact positively the housing fund. For instance, on the TIF district that I'm on, the advisory board that I sit on, that I'm the board chair of, when there was discussion of, well, what can the city do? I got a hold of the city community development division, Ellie Ray, and others, and asked, well, can the TIF funds be used or leveraged for housing? Can the TIF funds be leveraged for the businesses and nonprofits affected by the flooding that happened a little over a month ago? I was told by the staff that's probably not possible, but I think that we have to ask those questions of the experts that are employed here by the city to get their take on what we can and cannot do. But how to prioritize those issues, again, and then we have to look at the safety of our people, the condition of our places, but also to our prosperity. Yeah.
Me too.
Mr. Shirtlift, please explain a situation where you led change or innovation. What was the situation, and explain the outcome?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. When I was the small business advocate for the state of Montana in the governor's office, I helped create a system which was known as the Montana Business Navigator. It helped streamline the state's licensing and permitting process for business owners. It made it easier for businesses to start, operate, grow, and or relocate to Montana. It started out from receiving many calls on, I don't know where to go for answers within state government. I don't know, from a business owner standpoint, business owners would reach out and say, I don't know if I'm supposed to reach out to the Secretary of State's office, to the Department of Labor or Department of Revenue. Who should I talk to first? And so I helped lead an effort to categorize all of the state's licenses and permits that do pertain to businesses. Created an online tool that was award-winning and nationally recognized as a good tool for businesses, and ultimately Montana became one of the best states to start a business. We made it easier instead of making it kind of a witch hunt, or not a witch hunt, but a scavenger hunt, trying to find what do I do first. And so this kind of led an effort to combine resources at the state, local, federal, nonprofit level, as well as the state licensing and permitting. We received many awards, governor's awards, national awards. Another one more recently was with the Downtown Urban Renewal District that I'm the chair of, the advisory board for the city. During the pandemic, the TIF fund had roughly $200,000 in it, and we had to find ways to leverage that during the pandemic to keep our businesses open, but also to our priority was our people. So we looked at public health is something that we need to focus on, public information or public education, as well as public spaces. We received kudos and recognition from Commissioner Dean, who had said this is something that she mentioned at a meeting that she went to out of state, that this was something that she thought was pretty darn innovative. But post pandemic, we leveraged the fund to invest in our communities. We tried to get the money out as fast as we could, or at least advise the city commission to get the money out as fast as you could. One instance was this Sealy building. I had heard from Brian over at MBAC, Montana Business Assistance Connection, that due to the investment of that building, 4 other developers from outside of town are looking at Helena as being open for business. Those are some ways that we've innovated here in Helena.
Thank you.
I have a third question.
Sure.
Please describe an experience when you had to consider the opinions and experiences of diverse groups, and how did you find consensus amongst all stakeholders?
Great question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Dean. Thank you very much for the question. One of which, again, I mentioned the Downtown Urban Renewal District. It is a board, an advisory board made up of downtown businesses, downtown nonprofits, folks from the Holter to the Myrna Loy to folks that live up on Rodney Street. Folks that are representing housing, folks that represent the arts, or folks that represent historic preservation. These are not mutually exclusive, but there are differences of opinion, differences of priorities. And so as chair of that, I try to hear everybody out, but a lot of our work is based off of a work plan, which has been guided by the city, which has been guided by the Community Development Division. Sharon Hagan, who has since retired, Ellie Ray with your staff, who I've worked with for the last 2 years, April Sparks and their team, help guide those, give us guideposts. Ideas, we throw some ideas against the wall to see what sticks. We have applications that come our way. We have priorities from some of the board members that have to recuse themselves from meetings. We've had some heated or some spirited discussions, and we're not always going to agree. And I think that's the same thing that's true with the commission. We're not always going to agree, but we can agree to disagree, or disagree to agree. We can at least do it respectfully. And another thing is a project that I've been working on with the City of Helena, the Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Helena Inc., the airport, Montana Business Assistance Connection, Helena Winds, the Downtown Urban Renewal District is somewhat of a re-envisioning or rebranding for Helena. And it's not going to be what it's like from back in 2008 when we were left holding the bag and something that wasn't what we had purchased. It is a collaborative effort where we brought people from different points of view and different walks of life. We've put them in a room with Sovereign Creative and a facilitator from Butte. We've had over the past few months, we've had some really good discussions, different points of view. Now, the previous meeting we just had about a week ago, it sounded like we were all on the same page. So it takes a little time, it takes a little patience, but it takes some communication, and at least what's called inviting the stranger, at least sitting down and being willing to hear somebody out. And another one was not so much a group of people coming together, but during the pandemic, Lewis and Clark Public Health reached out along with St. Pete's Hospital. There was issues with folks not wearing masks during one of our peak periods, and through discussion, we decided not to focus on masks. We decided to focus on businesses that were doing the right thing, because we knew that they were hurting, that businesses were hurting. But especially downtown businesses that were struggling with, it was a restaurant that was struggling, and there's breweries that were struggling. But we decided to not highlight masks, but to highlight the restaurants and businesses that were trying to do the right thing by masking up, sanitizer stations, keeping distance, and making sure that you felt safe when you came in. We saw people that originally did not care for masks, did not care for vaccinations, came out and supported the posts that both Lewis and Clark and St. Pete's put out. This was a complete 180 in their in our approach, and it was a complete 180 in their approach to their comments. They went from very negative to positive and supportive. And so that's something where I think it's not what you say, it's how you say it sometimes. My wife tells me that all the time. So that's something that I've had to learn myself.
Question number 4. What training will you need to be successful in this position?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Reed, I'd like to ask you that. What training have you done? That's a rhetorical question. I hope to ask you that in a week or so, but I'd confer with you, Mayor and Commissioners, the city manager or the interim city manager, Tim Burton, the city attorney, along with the staff. I've had the opportunity to work with the community development folks for the last 2 years with my involvement with the Downtown Urban Renewal District. We've formed a really good relationship. Jacob Garson and I, along with Kelly Ray, Kara and others, some good folks here. The Parks Department, had the opportunity to work with them. I'd like to learn more about what they do. The Parks and Open Spaces folks, the police, Chief Petty and I have had an opportunity to talk, get to know one another. I was again in the inaugural Citizens Police Academy last fall, which I enjoyed. I understand that they have a full class. I just got the email that they have a full class for the fall. It was eye-opening. It was a great experience to get to know our city's police officers, see the facilities at 406 Fuller, but also to see the firing range, meet some of the SWAT, and see some of the equipment that they work with, and some of the SROs, meet with the fire chief, see what needs that they have, meet with the public works, HR, finance, etc. But I think most importantly, listen, learn, and learn to understand, go through the budget with a fine-tooth comb, even though that's going to be one of the first major decisions that will have to be made once a new commissioner is appointed. But there are trainings out there. I have looked up a few of them, but I'd like to learn from you all that I have that honor. Thank you, Commissioner Reed.
Thank you.
Mr. Shurtleff, the commission is responsible for policy decisions on behalf of the city. Please describe a time you were successful in improving systems through policy development.
Well, for instance, we have the triage, we have the policy, we have to prioritize, form an agenda, but also too, we have to get public comment. That's state law that is in our city charter. We have to then formulate a plan, adopt, implement, and change when needed. That's the purpose of our city commission, is to have that public comment, to have people either Zoom in online or participate in person. I know that's this is something else that I'll touch on another question, but when it comes to policy development, I think we can touch on what we did with the with Lewis and Clark Public Health and with St. Pete's. That's one area where we tried to adjust policy, or at least adjust communication about a policy. My involvement with the Downtown Urban Renewal District, being the chair for that, we worked really closely with the city community development division, and we worked through we had ideas and priorities what we wanted to work on, but also too, it was my recommendation that we consider the priorities of the city commissioner, or the mayor and the city commission, and work through a work plan, which is what we did with the community development. And it took weeks, it took many hours to get through this and subcommittees to get through this, but we set our work plan so that it was fair, but also to it recognized the needs of the community today.
Mr. Shirley, what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role?
Well, I think 5 C's would do it for me. Consistency. I think that that's something we need, and we need to look towards city charter. is our guidepost or our guidelines. If we're not sure, it's always good to take a look at that and our state constitution. Having that sort of consistency when you're making decisions, so it's not willy-nilly, it's not giving a parking variance here and not there. I think that builds trust with your fellow commissioners. It also builds trust with your constituents. Communication, communicating with you all on how we feel about things, or if you have questions or concerns, making sure it's on the up and up, because we are, if you are public officials, what you say and do is public, and emails, texts, all that. But being smart with your communication, communicating with your constituents, whether it's via email, text, phone, Facebook, social media, and whatnot. But being consistent with each other and our constituents. Commitment. I think this is something that I think is, this takes a lot of time. What you all do does take time. See, absolutely. I know all of you, and I know the passion and the commitment that you have to this position. It takes hours out of your day. It takes hours out of your month, away from family, away from kids, away from loved ones, away from animals, but it shows your commitment to your city and making it better. Our community. We live in an incredible community. In the meetings that I've had with the downtown Helena, with the chamber, MBAC, community leaders, business owners that talk about how do we define Helena? It was hard to put a pin on it. It was hard to kind of label it. Is it one way or the other? Is it outdoorsy, indoorsy? Is it professional or is it not? We're a lot of things. We're kind of this dichotomy. It's definitely it's a wonderful place that's very independent, but also too, they won't leave you hanging. They will work to help you out, whether it's, Eric Dowell down at Safeway starting a fundraiser or doing Toys for Tots, or it's people down at Food Share doing a drive for kids during the school year. So I think that, those things, I think me being involved in the community, I think are valuable. And I think they bring a good perspective to the commission. But also to courage. I think having the courage to learn in public, but also to the courage to say things that might not always jive well with the mayor, the fellow commissioners, your citizens, your fellow citizens, but having the courage to make a tough call, but also to face your constituents, to face folks that might be upset, or that might be proud, that might be not exactly pleased with your decision, but the decisions you make aren't always going to please 100% of the people 100% of the time. And having the courage to do that, I believe I've shown that. Those are some of the things that I believe that I excel at in this role.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are times when members of a local government legislative body stray outside of their statutory roles and insert themselves into the day-to-day operations of the organization, sometimes unknowingly. Understandably wanting to be responsive to their constituents, that sometimes the proper mechanisms can inhibit or hinder. How dedicated are you to working within the confines of the city charter when it comes to organizational management? How would you temper that desire to stray from that charter mandate?
Commissioner Dean, thank you for the question. That's an excellent question. Our charter, this document is our guidelines. There is a structure to this, and that's something that I appreciate and something I like very much. Our charter is a well-written document along with our state constitution. They do have different jurisdictions, but when it comes to, if we have questions, talk to each other. There is a hierarchy here, being the mayor pro temp, and others are the other commissioners, but also to the city attorney and the city manager are good resources for that, and the staff. If you have questions, just ask. If you're not sure if you're supposed to be holding that town hall meeting or that Zoom meeting, or us getting together for dinner, I'm sure there are things, the do's and can and cannot do's. I am absolutely A-okay. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. It's something that I appreciate and absolutely respect and will honor.
Okay, last question. Due to its proximity to their constituency, local government officials are in direct contact with the public they serve, next door neighbors, coworkers, even lifelong friends. That accessibility can result in the same constituents speaking to the commission on a repeated basis, sometimes on the same community matters time and again. Please explain the approach you intend to use to weigh the public outreach you personally receive, to consider staff recommendations, and to examine the greater community needs.
I think it's important to listen to our constituents. I think they provide much needed information. They're our friends and neighbors. They have their own concerns, their own picadillos, they have their own things that, again, Helena is diverse. We have folks that live in residential areas, we have folks that live in apartments, and folks that might not have homes. And so I think listening is important, taking notes, but also too, I would encourage them so that it's not too far, doesn't seem to be too influential. Invite them to email the commission, the mayor and commissioners at helenamt.com, or attend one of the city commission meetings to express their feelings and thoughts. Or, but I think it's important to listen to the learning from you all, but also to learning from the city attorney and the city manager what we're allowed to do. But I think it's important to listen and then redirect if it becomes too often on every subject that you're hearing about, because I think public hearings, I think, are key to the system that we're operating in. And you're going to hear from your constituents, whether it's in the newspaper, email, phone call, text, social media, and all that. So that's something I think is being a representative for our community. I think that's incredibly important, but doing it through the right channels goes in line with question number 7 as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed.
Mr. Shirley, we have concluded the formal part of our interview. And do you have any questions for us?
I overheard some discussion. Who almost got hit in the head with a rock from hiking?
Oh.
Is that you? You okay?
It was a while ago.
You bet. Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I know read some of the comments. I really enjoyed the process, so I appreciate it. I think I bring a perspective that's not from like one business owner. My wife's a business owner. She works as a state employee. My stepson owns a business. My younger stepson, he owned a business during the pandemic. I've got not just their perspective, but the perspective of downtown businesses within the community, nonprofits, citizens like ourselves. And I'd be honored to join you and join your ranks. And I look forward to hopefully learning from you, listening to you. But regardless of the outcome, I incredibly appreciate this a lot. So Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to approach this.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a suggestion. Given that we have 4 candidates, we need to get to 1. I would suggest maybe we each put forward our top 2. See where that gets us and eliminate any candidates who have no more than 1 vote. And then from that smaller group, we can see what we're dealing with and proceed from there. I've tried to come up with any number of
I've been
different ways
trying
to bring this list down, and that would be my suggestion as a starting point to begin to move towards a majority or consensus candidate, ideally.
Any comments from others?
Let's
I
see
think
what-
that, yeah,
Let's see what happens.
Okay,
I mean, do we feel like we can all do one and then, or should we go with two?
we could certainly go with one. I'm giving people the opportunity to
Yeah, no,
start to narrow and identify, but I'm very comfortable with everyone just putting forward their top. I think that may lead us to possibly having to come up with the next step, and so maybe narrowing it the other direction might be more efficient, but again, I'm open
That
to
was kind of
suggestions.
originally how I envisioned doing it, because I assumed that we would all have sort of a top candidate coming out of
Yep.
Friday and today so I guess we just advocate for who we think that individual best fits. I don't know. That was sort of how I saw it. And then it's-
Okay, so what are we doing? The top or the top two? What do we?
I think if I might, Commissioner Logan's approach would give us a list of top choices, whereas mine would give us a list of possibly narrowing the field, which is, it's two different ways to get to the same place. So I think as long as everybody feels comfortable with one or the other, I'm fine either way.
Commissioner Dane, what say you?
I can go either way. I think I definitely feel like I have a top one after these interviews, but we might be in a position where we have to discuss further, so. I'm okay either
What
way.
did you say, Commissioner?
I was just prepared to advocate for who I thought my top person would be.
Okay,
And, and prepared, I'd be prepared to throw a name out just for the purposes of discussions. But
okay, I think we should go with the top one then.
Yeah.
And then, so, but I want some clarification. So, top one, let's say the top one gets 2 votes. That's not majority. What next?
It would be my opinion, Mr. Mayor, that we would need someone who would have at least 3 votes.
Yeah, that's,
To move
yeah,
forward.
that's what I'm saying. But what if we don't get there?
If I might, that was why I had proposed a narrowing of the field to get us closer to a consensus candidate. But I think we can simply discuss and come at it from a different angle.
Okay,
so
Yes.
like, it seems that Commissioner Reed and I have 2 divergent approaches, which are fine. And so then it's like, I think now to you, to the 2 of you to sort of, okay, which way do we go?
let's narrow the field. In my opinion.
I think that's fine.
Okay,
In that case, top 2,
yes.
to narrow the field. If people do not receive 2 votes,
Mhm.
they are eliminated and we move to the next round. Okay.
Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Go ahead,
I
Commissioner.
say Mr. McGee and Mr. Shirtley.
You want to talk through the reason?
Maybe when we hear from
Sure.
everybody,
I
if
think
that'd be okay.
Commissioner Dean?
Well, it's interesting because I thought that my head was in one place coming into today, but then after these final interviews, it's actually, I can be persuaded. My number 1 is Kim Mangold. Then I think my number 2 is Troy McGee.
Commissioner?
Yep. My top 2 candidates are Brian Harrington and Kim Mangold.
You're not making this damn thing.
Well,
Okay.
it's a process. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I hear you.
I would like to talk about why though, after if we can.
Here.
There's no problem you can talk about here. My two would be Harrington and Shirtlift.
Okay,
Okay. Well, that's,
therefore, they're all moving forward. which That was, oh, no.
That's what I
Yeah.
was afraid
Yeah.
That's
of.
okay, but I think it's important that we
No.
see.
so I
if
think
there's
let's
a
now
narrowing.
talk through
Cool.
where people are.
All right, I'd be willing to have a crack at it.
Sure.
if That's all right. So is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please, I'm just,
He's groaning in himself.
Growling.
go ahead, go ahead.
Okay.
please.
Well, my top pick, I thought in terms of both interviews, Friday and today, was Mr. McGee. I think one of the things coming into this decision for me was taking a look, we clearly got a vacancy on the commission. And I think we have to look at the moment in time we find ourselves. And if you think back to 4 or 5 months ago, we hired Tim Burton as our interim city manager on the heels of our 6th manager or interim manager departure since 2018. And so that's caused, I would say, some organizational instability, to say the least. And I think we were lucky to get Mr. Burton to fill that interim manager position. And Mr. Burton very quickly assessed where we were at and gave us 3 priorities. That was organizational stabilization. That means, filling those department head vacancies that we had, and looking at the operations, the systems, the structures, and where they've been over the course of the last 5 years. And clearly, we've got some needs to address there. Also, our budget. Mr. Burton had given us, I think, the best budget that we've had, not only in terms of operational, but in terms of the capital budget. And but I think it's clear that we have a long way to go, and he's made mention of that in the one-on-ones that I've had with him. And we've also, as my question was the first one, and it was an important question for me because I think we've got some pretty significant decisions ahead of us, not only in terms of establishing a budget process over time that gets us to a place of financial stability, but we've got some things before us, if you think about it, some essential needs that only the city can provide, with our police department, with our 3rd fire station, with the infrastructure that we need. Clearly, there are multi-million dollars of need there in our underground infrastructure, streets, sidewalks, and so on. And then, of course, the 3rd priority was ARPA spending, and that was balanced really against our capital plan, which Mr. Burton had clearly lined out for us. I think gave us a good picture of what we have, the condition it's in, and how we need to finance it moving forward. So I think we're in a place where we really need to, think about some pretty fundamental issues that the city is going to be dealing with in the future. And so I'm going to be looking to experience. And I think Mr. McGee has the most experience related to municipal government and the serious challenges that we're going to be facing in the very near future. Obviously, he's got a lot of experience. He explained that Friday in his resume, and today, 43 years with the city, 2-time interim manager, but he was also the only candidate of those that we saw in the last few days that took the time and spent the energy to actually run a campaign. And in doing that, I'd say he garnered a great deal of community support. If you think back, the editorial board of the Independent Record supported Mr. McGee. Our city's union supported him, and he gained about 5,400 or over 5,400 votes of Helena citizens. So I think he's not only got experience, he's got support. I'd like to finish with one story, and I apologize that I'm long-winded, but I think it's an important one. So when I was fire chief, I can clearly remember a day coming out of 221 Breckenridge. It's the jail. Well, at the time they had the police department and the sheriff's office had their offices in that building. And I came out after a long afternoon of meetings up there, and at the same time, the district court judge was coming out of the courthouse. And I'd known this particular judge for many years, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. And we shook hands in the street. And oddly enough, we sat down on the curb and caught up. And the subject of Troy McGee came up. And he said to me, I suppose it was because I was in a meeting with him probably, but he said to me, Sean, I've watched Troy McGee over many years. And he said, the one thing that has always impressed me about Mr. McGee is that he led with an overarching philosophy of, if it's good for the community, let's do it. And I think that's how he led his police department. I think he would bring that leadership to the commission. And if you think back a couple of years ago, when we did our sort of self-reflection on the police department, its policies and procedures, and we formed working groups to discuss that reform. We found coming out of those what I knew we would find before we started it, because of Chief McGee's leadership, is that our police department was leaps and bounds ahead of police departments across the nation. And so I'm confident that he will bring that style of leadership to the commission. I think it will help us with the next few years in terms of organizational and financial stability. And I think he's just the right choice for this moment in time. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Reed.
I am gonna need a moment to
Commissioner
between my
Dean.
two, if you don't mind.
I can go ahead. I want to preface this that I think that we left out with a lot of great candidates. None of this is a vote against anyone. But it's interesting, head into our first Friday, our first interviews. I had an idea in my head of, I think these will probably be, my top 2 candidates, see how the interviews go. And after Friday, the interviews made a big difference for me. And Ms. Mangold came to the top. I think specifically because she was the only person that we interviewed, and she didn't talk about this as much today, but on Friday, we were lucky to hear more about truly the only candidate that we have that has front row leadership experience right now in Helena, dealing with what we continue to hear is our #1 issue of housing. We know the YWCA is the one who's leading a lot of the way in the community in terms of dealing with emergency and transitional housing. I think having her background with that would be very, very helpful on this commission as we start to deal with some of these issues. And really think about how we get results, not just, put some money towards some things and see what happens, being very targeted in how we're moving forward. So the housing piece is a big one for me because she has that very specific experience and the only person that we've interviewed that has had that specific experience. The other piece that really stood out to me, and I think today just exemplified it beyond what we saw Friday, she was a candidate that gave very specific answers to every single question we asked. Not only could she identify whatever the issue was within the question that we posed, but give us a specific example and experience where she led and an outcome was a result. And I think that, as Commissioner Logan noted, we have a lot of really challenging issues coming up. I think we're going to need someone who can be thoughtful about an issue, know how to do their homework, hit the ground running, and move forward in a collaborative manner. I think that we've done a really good job over the last few months of the commission working as a team. It doesn't mean we agree on everything. I think that the result that we are still talking about all 4 candidates shows that we don't necessarily agree on all things, but at least, getting to a point where we can make a decision and move in a way with purpose that gets a result. The other thing that I think really, and I mean, she's even trained in she is a certified mediator. And sometimes we work with difficult constituencies, can be difficult. If you've ever worked in the ag community, it's even more difficult. So I think that it exemplifies her ability to work with diverse and various groups in a manner to get results. I think finally, the big thing for me is that in Helena, we've been, really trying to build systems that work for people. I think that we as a commission have made a priority of ensuring that we are, delivering our essential services, but also moving forward and improving what we have so that we can be the community that we want to be. Kim seemed to have a real grasp that local government can and should be not just a force for good, but a force to improve people's lives. And how you can take very specific particular policies and improve the quality of life of the folks that you're working with. She has actual experience doing that. And I think that it'd be very helpful to have someone with that kind of experience on the commission as we move forward and, delving into these really difficult challenges that we know are coming down. So that is where I am. I was just thoroughly impressed. I started asking around this weekend because besides her experience with the YWCA, I really didn't know much about Kim as much as I knew about some of the other candidates, and heard nothing but glowing reviews from folks who worked with her at the Department of Ag, that she was a mentor to many, many people, very smart, a quick study, and committed to getting things done, which made me feel good about what we saw on Friday, and even better about what we saw today. So I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Dean. This was a very hard choice, so hard that I think I could flip a coin between the top 2 I have, and I'm very torn if I have to choose just one. Listening to the remarks of the other commissioners, I think my first choice is Brian Harrington, because I'm stuck on the thought that it's not just about this moment. I'm thinking about the future of Helena and my vision for our community. And I felt like Ms. Harrington's answers and her experience working with downtown and the BID is very reflective of the changes we're seeing in our community. She has a direct experience working with those processes, working with business owners. I also noted the letters we've gotten from community members in response to this process. She received a lot of support from different groups expressing her ability to navigate complicated issues. I think the interview process really was interesting. The specificity of answers, the sort of understanding about how we as a commission work with the rest of our community. That what the commission does is sort of, its own odd process, and understanding how that interacts with the rest of the community. I thought Ms. Harrington had a very good perspective on how that interaction takes place. I will again say that I was extremely impressed by the candidates. It was a very difficult decision to come up with a first, but I believe Ms. Harrington is an excellent representative of the community, and I think a perspective that would be very valuable on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. For me, when we started this, I knew we were going to end up this way. And it bothered me from day one. I listened to the late Commissioner Eric Fever. Commissioner Fever had 40+ years working with local, state, and national governments. And I remember when he came and joined us as a commission, he said, "I'm drinking out of a fire hose." You remember that? And I was shocked when he said that, because this is someone who had all the governmental experience, yet still local government. It's a little different. I mean, in fact, I'll rephrase it. It's not a little different. It's a lot different from the everyday experience, because you do not have 83,000 people watching you. I didn't even know Metropolitan Helena, where 83,000 people are watching you and inquiring from you and asking you and making them a part of the constituents. So when I knew we were heading this direction, I started inquiring from people in the community. What's our next step? What do we do? What do we do? Because I knew we were going to end up this way. And someone said, in fact, Mr. Burton said, table it, sleep on it, and come back the next day. I said, but we'll be in the same spot. We can table it and come back and sleep on it and come back the next day. We'll still be in the same spot. What do we do from here? So my selection, as part of the reason I selected who I selected was because they're familiar with a lot of things we're doing. But we've got quality candidates. And I don't think the candidates are the problem right now. I think we're the problem. Because we can't come to a consensus on who do we want and why we want them. So explaining why we're selecting the candidates, how does it change the process? How does it? We need a process. And that's what bothered me all last night, because I just knew it was going to be this way. And I tested the system and we came back to the same thing. What do we do?
Have you given us your top choice, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I thought I did.
You gave us your top two. Was it ranked?
Yes. What?
You gave us your top two, but we've each come back with our top one.
My top two were Harrington and
Yes.
Shirley.
But we've now each gone with our top one.
Harrington.
Okay. So given that, if I might, Mr. Mayor, we have one candidate with 2 votes and 2 candidates with 1 vote apiece. That means we're down to 3 who have any votes.
Who are they?
Mr. McGee received 1 vote, Ms. Mangold received 1 vote, and Ms. Harrington received 2 votes. So as a first choice, Mr. Shirtliff was not identified as a first choice
Okay,
for
so
anybody.
he's done.
So we have 3. We could, options would include ranking, people being willing to change a vote from what they originally said, I think we could do it a number of different ways.
I'll just say up front, I'm gonna have a hard time moving my choice, just in good conscience, because I think what we need now is a person that's very experienced in municipal government to help us as the managers and stated, is we've got a long ways to go in terms of organizational and financial stability. So I think we need somebody with direct experience in municipal government and
Did you? Oh, yeah, you did.
I'm gonna have a hard time moving.
So one thing that I would offer, one of the reasons I liked Ms. Mangold was because and this is not out of the ordinary for me. I like to find middle ground where we can move forward, which is one of the reasons why I really liked her, because I felt that she had a balance of the experiences that we were looking for, or some were looking for, while also being part of efforts in the community that are working on difficult issues like housing, but also understanding, some of the basic services that we also have to balance. So I felt like she was more of a middle ground candidate. If we got to a position where we say we have 3 in front of us, I would put her in the middle ground of addressing some of the concerns of experience, but also having the background of thinking about where do we want to be as a community in 5, 10, 15 years. So I would offer, I think that she might be a potential consensus candidate that bridges that divide between, I think, the other 2 candidates that are before us.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I would say that if Ms. Mangold appeared as a consensus candidate, I would move my vote to Ms. Mangold.
Still, okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, while you're thinking.
Oh, I'm done.
Oh, you're
I'm
done?
done making up my mind. Go ahead.
I was just gonna share the comment you made about drinking from a fire hose.
Mhm.
And I think about some of the decisions that are really immediately before us. I mean, we've got deliberation over ARPA and capital funds. There's tension there, there's competition there. And I mean tension between those 2 parts of our financial decisions. But if you think about, for example, our police staff, they've been telling us since 2018 that they don't have the staff to meet the demands that our communities put on them. And mercifully, we have a staffing study that's will be completed this spring. And I think what they're going to show us is we're quite behind relative to any national standard. So that's a big financial obligation. It needs someone that understands that. We've also got the 3rd fire station. Now, I tell you, we've heard about that in the last couple of years. But that discussion has been going on for well over 25 years. That we have that need. Now, that's not just the fire station. It's a multi-million-dollar facility. It's going to require people to staff it. It's going to require equipment to operate out of it. And we've also got our infrastructure needs that are just ongoing. And so there's going to be some immediate decisions that need to be made. And I think having somebody with the wealth of experience that Mr. McGee has, I think I think we're lucky to have him in the mix. There will be less drinking from the fire hose, so to speak. I think it's gonna be more up and more ready to get up and running. So, just a thought.
And Mr. Mayor, if I might, I think I appreciate the perspective Commissioner Logan is bringing and the experience Mr. McGee would bring, but I think one of the things I found interesting about the commission prior to working with the city at all was knowing that the people making decisions were people just like me. And I think looking at public safety issues from the perspective of the consumer, for lack of a better term, to me, it is very valuable to have the perspective of people who are impacted by these decisions, not because they know the inner workings. I think that is up to the department heads and the city manager to have the technical knowledge. I think representative government is about being representative. And I really appreciate a number of our candidates for bringing a perspective that is not inner workings of local government. It's quite the contrary. It's people who live here and work here and operate business and raise children. And I would suggest that that's not that one set of experience or perspective is better, but it was, to me, part of wanting to be a part of this commission was to be a representative of the community versus a person who knew a great deal about how things work.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Might need to speak directly.
Thank you. So
Can I ask you, Mr. Mayor?
can you ask me?
Yeah, I'm asking you a question.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, I think Ms. Mangold might be consensus, a middle ground candidate. I think Commissioner Logan can't get there, which I respect. Could you get there?
I don't know.
If I might, Commissioner Dean, while the mayor contemplates that as a secondary consensus candidate, since Ms. Harrington had 2 votes, would you be willing to consider her as a consensus candidate?
So coming into, I think, well, during when we ranked on Friday, she was in my top. I was really glad that she applied because I like that we have folks of various backgrounds. And again, I don't want this to come, I want to vote for. I will say I was less enthused, and maybe that's not the right word. The responses today were not, I think, where I would hope a commissioner would be coming in. I think that given that, we talked a lot about in the questions even on Friday, these are some of the big issues that are facing the community, housing, etc. Let's talk about some of the ways that we find solutions. And I don't think I got specific enough examples today that I feel like, especially considering this position is 1.5 years before it's up for election. I think I'm more concerned about the ability to
Madam Clerk?
That is the request for you all to speak into the mics.
oh, am I doing more? I want this person to be able to hit the ground running. And I don't know that I saw as much preparation as would be necessary coming into today's meeting. Not that can't be overcome, but she was definitely at the top of my list on Friday, and today less so.
Why everybody looking at me, man? Y'all don't even take me into consideration.
Mr. Mayor, we were waiting to see if you would be willing to consider Ms. Mangold as a consensus candidate.
No,
And I guess Commissioner Dean, you didn't give a hard answer on.
I really don't feel. Given the responses we saw today, I feel a lot less comfortable simply because we do, I mean, for example, I think that, you know, just gonna give, I don't want to do a comparison, but I will. When we talk about affordable housing as an issue, we had with one candidate an immediate recognition that let's look to ARPA. Let's evaluate what this situation is and working with community partners to find a solution. The other was, if you see something, a visible problem, you should tackle it. Don't disagree with that, but I don't think it's as simple as just tackling it. I think we all know that. And so that's, I want this person to be set up for success, particularly because you only have a year and a half. And I don't feel like I could get there after today's interviews.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
please.
question for you. Would you consider Mr. McGee?
We're not supposed to be here.
Well, unfortunately, we are. And that's what the discussion, I think, I've
Nothing is,
really appreciated this discussion. DT. I thank you all for it. I think this is.
no,
good.
I don't thank you all for this. Because we shouldn't be here. So mine, when I'm telling you like it is, I don't think we should have concluded this thing a long time ago. We've been dragging our feet. We said we'll pick 5. We drag it to 7. So we'll pick 4. We drag it to 6. We drag it to this. We have not gone with our own rules and regulation that we set out to do. So now we're here, and I knew we we're going to get here, and I knew we we're going to get stuck. So to answer your question, yeah, I could, but I'm not there right now.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, going back, I know it seems unconventional, but since there were originally 2 votes, I guess I should ask everybody, would you consider Mr. Shirtliff as a consensus candidate? Commissioner Logan, would you consider him as a consensus candidate?
I would consider.
Mr. Collins, Mr. Mayor, sorry,
I could.
you could. Commissioner Dean,
I don't know if I could.
I could.
So what next?
If I'm recapping correctly, we now have 3 could on Mr. Shirtliff. Unclear answer on Mr. McGee.
So can I ask the mayor a question?
Why everybody asking the mayor a question?
I mean, it's the same question that, you know, Commissioner Reed asked me. Can you maybe talk me through how you can get to, like, your thought process in
Personal
consensus?
preference. Personal preference. Someone I think I can work with plays a role in that.
And you didn't get that from the interviews?
And I didn't get what?
I mean, I mean, that's beyond just the interviews.
Oh, that's with the interviews also.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I might pose a question
To whom?
to me, Commissioner Dean,
Go ahead.
ask the same question of Mr. McGee.
Yeah, a couple things. I think I was more impressed with his interview today than on Friday. I will say that I think that I really struggle, given that there was just an election. And I say this with the utmost respect because I truly love Troy McGee as a human being. He's wonderful. And I've been lucky to know him, for a long time. I struggle with following an election in which he wasn't selected and selecting him. I think that I just struggle with that. I think that if, not that I hope he runs again, but I struggle with making a vote that is not consistent with what the voters chose 8 months ago. Which is, my primary, it's not a vote against, but it's a vote that I struggle when it's the opposite of where the voters were 8 months ago.
So where are we?
We could do, Mr. Mayor, if I might. Sorry. The light's changing and my brain is starting to fog. We could propose a potential vote on either of the two candidates that are maybe consensus candidates and just see where we go.
So let's recap. Who are those?
If I'm tracking everything correctly, we have possible consensus candidates in Mr. Shirtliff and Mr. McGee. It did not appear as though people were willing to move from their positions on Ms. Harrington and Ms. Mangold, if I'm tracking correctly, but it's these two who are who's tracking. So it would let me rephrase
You're
the
right.
question. Well, I'm correct. So we have two people who are possibly consensus candidates. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Does anyone wish to reconsider before we see what we do with that information?
Break out the dry erase board.
I have my own version. Do we feel comfortable considering these two candidates for right now, not non-binding at this point? Does anyone wish to say anything before we?
So what I will say is that if those are the two consensus candidates, I would like to pull a Tim Burton and sleep on it. And I know the mayor's gonna lose it, but
I'm not losing it. I was about to recommend the same thing.
oh, okay.
And
You
yes,
sure you
I
can't
think-
get to Kim Mangold?
I think Manager Burton said it. When you get to this point, sleep on it and let's talk about it.
Mr. Mayor, if I might clarify, are we sleeping on two candidates?
Yes.
That's perhaps not the best way to phrase that, but are we going to pause our deliberations on 2 or 4?
2.
Do we feel comfortable eliminating 2 at this point?
I do.
I do.
I mean, I don't love it, but I think that we have to move forward.
Yes.
I will say, I think that we had one that I think was in the middle that had the variety of experiences that I think multiple people were looking for. I understand that that is not where enough of the folks are, and so we can go ahead.
I guess I would like to sort of raise a complication, just in terms of the sleeping on it. I'm comfortable with that idea, but sleeping on it till when?
Tomorrow.
Well,
Can we
first,
do that?
It'd need to be Thursday, right?
We don't have enough time, Mr. Mayor,
Well, with
Commissioners.
notice.
We don't have enough time for notice on that. There's no notice.
So what would the soonest we
If I might, and I'll obviously ask City Attorney Doctor to weigh in, just as far as process is concerned at this stage, Mayor and Commissioners. We have noticed a meeting for a tentative schedule, if you will, at the beginning of this process and that PSA for the 29th. That was intended to be the oath of office, and there would be a vote. In order, as what's laid out in the charter, there is a declaration that we should be taking a majority vote on your candidate of choice. You could potentially
Do it then.
just do it then
Mhm.
on the two
Plenty of
candidates. that
sleep.
you're-
Between now and then.
It would indeed give you plenty of time to sleep on it. And then you could take that vote on the two candidates you selected from this evening. I'll have the popcorn ready.
Was that?
I said I will have my popcorn ready
When?
for the 29th.
On the
If that's
29th when we're done sleeping on it.
Let's do it.
Can I suggest maybe we take like a 2-minute break and then decide if that's really what we're doing, or if we're just gonna make a decision tonight? Or do we, no one's gonna move?
I'd like to sleep on it.
I'm comfortable with that approach. Recap it, since you seem to be the most on top of it, Commissioner Reed, would you recap for us what that sleeping on it means?
I think it means that we will make a decision on the 29th between Mr. Shirtliff and Mr. McGee.
I'm good with that.
Are we doing the swearing in then on Monday, or do we need to
After we
postpone that
negotiate, when is the meeting on the 29th?
it
Monday?
is currently scheduled for 6 p.m.
Okay, that's me 5 o'clock. Select the person and then we,
Can we meet at 5? Do we have enough time to move the start time?
We have time for notice now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just so I understand, Mayor and Commissioners, in a matter of process, you would like me to schedule an additional meeting for the selection, final selection, and then
5 and then
the 6
we,
p.m. that we've already discussed with roommate.
right.
Okay, yes, then
We don't want to give the candidates. We'll just let them know one of you will be chosen and be there.
Yes, I would reach out to the candidates tonight and let them know that there will be an additional special meeting at 5 p.m. If I understood you correctly, on the 29th. I have not posted the agenda for 6 p.m. on Monday. There is another item that will be on that agenda conveniently. And the oath of office would be given that evening for your selected candidate from the 5 p.m. meeting. Does that sound accurate?
That is correct. Any final comments from the commission? At this point, do we have any public comments? Or do we need public comments in this?
Yes, we do. And I just have one final comment.
Yeah.
It's a happy one.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you check the online to see if we have any hand raised? No. Commissioner Dean,
I would just close. I think that I'm glad that we're taking this as seriously as we are. Commissioner Fever would want us to take it this seriously, and he would probably get a kick out of the negotiating that has been happening tonight. He was the best negotiator that I've ever known. There's a reason he was so successful in 40 years of normally very, very red legislatures that were very rarely in agreement with him. And yet he got a lot of good stuff done for all of those many decades. And I think that he'd be glad that we were taking it this seriously and being thoughtful. And I'll just close with that.
Mr. Mayor, I might just quickly add, I'd like to thank all of the candidates that have been involved up in both Friday and today. Great pool of candidates. I would also like to thank my colleagues. I know, Mr. Mayor, that it's frustrating that we're here, but I also find it very refreshing that we could discuss it. I think that's, I appreciate each of your individual candor and being willing to discuss that. So thank you very much.
thank you, Commissioner. Any final words from you, Madam Commissioner? Okay, So I thank all of you, and I think like the rest of the body said, we thank the candidates. We've had some quality candidates, and but yeah, it's time to move on. So without anything else, this meeting is adjourned.